That's the air filter back on, just have to fit the bottom. So pipe all fitted, Jubilee's fitted. It's sitting there just on top of the bracket, and it closes nice and level there. It doesn't hit anything, it's rightly centered, so that means nothing's going to go banging or scratching there. So I'm very happy with that. 2 coats of paint, rust primer. So yeah, I'll get the bottom on it and then I'll finish it off then with the decal, as I said earlier. I can start rebuilding the PTO lever selector plate, we'll call it. So we'll put in a bit of grease in there. And the shaft is cleaned up, the sealing surface is cleaned up. So a bit of grease on the shaft there. A bit of grease around the sealing lip. This little lad goes in there. You put in your spring first. You let him sit in there. Then in goes this. And that little point goes into one of them. So you sit in any one of them. Put on your washer. Put on your lever. And then you find your bolt wherever it's gone. There. And we said we put this in from below. So I'll move this over to the device and come back. So the idea now is that you just get it lined up and drive the bolt into it. Put an extension on that. Finish that with a spanner because the washer is just stuck on the socket from getting the last little nip on it. Now, there we go. So this is ready for some Indian head, and it should select proper there now. The ground PTO into neutral and into engine PTO. So that's that. Nice and neat. I'm happy with that. I think it's a vast improvement. The only thing I see now is, I said I drive the bolt from below up. But looking at it there now, actually, I think it's perfect the way it is. So I'll get my Indian head and we'll move over to the tractor. On with the Indian head. Mighty stuff this. Doesn't matter if you get it on the casting and it all cleans off. So that's step number 1 done. So now I'll get the plate now and bring it over. Be a little bit awkward fitting this plate unless you remember where you set your lever. Otherwise you're faffing about a bit trying to find whether it was in neutral or it was in ground PTO or engine PTO. So I left it in engine PTO, and when I fitted it then it was easy to do. It's easy to refit it then, everything lined up. You have to line up with the selector in there. So the only thing missing now is there's a long one here for the footboard, so we'll put him in loosely just so we know where he is. Move him out of the way and you'll get this one in. like so, and then I have to look for a spring washer for there, and that's your spring washer, and then the nut, and after that it's just going to be a matter of tightening up. So if you remember, when I was taking it apart, it looked like there was plumber's tape around that, which is a kind of we'll call it a field repair. So it's nice to be able to fit the proper seal into it. Very, very cheap seals, very small, very easy to fit. And it's a nice plate. It's a nice plate to have cleaned down and have all the writing on it clear. Now you can see the Indian head starting to squeeze out around the plate. That'll do its job nicely, and I'll come along then with a bit of that WD-40 and just give it a bit of a wipe away after a couple of days. I need the excess. Now, and I'll touch up them bolts as well with a bit of paint. There was no point painting them and then putting a socket on them, so I'll touch them up. So that's that. I'll put it into gear, go around here and make sure it actually is in gear. It does seem to be selecting, and it is. I'll put it into neutral just to do a quick check on it to make sure it's all working. I think we should be able to spin it now. Maybe not, maybe that's connected to something else. Or maybe it's not in the selector at all. Yeah, that's what I think it is actually. What I was feeling there was not in the selector, it was actually just a spring. So I'll take that off again and we'll do the test again. There now, I'm so used to the Ferguson 20cc and they don't have that spring at the back of the lever with the little pointy lad clicking into the hole. And of course I thought that was actually it in gear, but it's not. So it's in neutral there. We can spin the PTO. We put it into gear. We can't. So that feels perfect. No free play at all. Brilliant. I'm delighted with that. So I'll just give them a quick clean down in situ and just tidy them up with a bit of paint. As there was no point painting them first because they'd only end up destroying them with the socket and stuff. It's just to take the bad luck off them. But first what I'll do is get my degreaser wipe, give all that a clean around and clean up the Indian head that's started coming out through it, and we'll touch that up with a bit of paint. That is the air filter back on. As I said earlier, I didn't want to paint the bracket that holds it on because you end up getting paint on the threads in there and it gets a bit awkward and you've paint running all over the place. We cut the end of that pipe as well to get a better edge on it, straighter edge on it there in yesterday's video. So that's that fitted. I'm now going to fit the decal onto it, and if I feel I'm going to be doing any heavy work around here that could damage this, what I'll do is I'll just loosen this and just twist the bottom pan inwards out of the way so it's not going to get damaged. So that should go on there, right in the middle of there and there roughly. It's a nice quality sticker. This is like it's thick and like plasticky feel to it. And now to straighten it up then, just loosen this and then we should be able to give it a little twist whatever way we want. That's the beauty of it. So that's something similar to the way it probably should be. I'm happy enough with that, and it's just going to finish it off nicely, lining up nicely there on top as well, so we're not scratching or scraping or anything like that. And the air filter pre-cleaner fits perfect. So no, I think that's a nice tidy job. I can go and fit this steering arm to the master spline there. So what I did was set the steering wheel straight on this side here. Set it so that it's just basically above the peg. There's the bit of touching up I did on the bolts there, so that's nice. And set it straight at the steering foot, at the foot peg stud, and then set this as well straight, and you should be right to go. It fits on the master spline then. And I'll screw him in, and if I damage the paint, probably will here and there, I'll touch it up. Simple as that. These, as I said before, are massive. Probably one of the biggest nuts or sizes on the tractor. I have a 36 spanner there, which is 1.5 inches, and it's not getting near it. It must be up near 40 mil. Very close to it. So tighten that up. We'll be ready then to fit our track rod ends in there. There won't be any issue at all because they're on a cone shape. So they'll always literally push through by hand, and then you tighten them, and that's when they'll grip then. So I'll finish nipping that up and we'll get on to the next job. So if you remember in earlier videos, the other foot peg on the other side had metric nuts on it, and it was loose, and that was allowing this radius arm to rattle. And what happens is when you turn your steering wheel, this will start going in and out, taking up the slop on the front axle, and that will give you free play. And this is loose as well, so it's missing spring washers, so these could be threaded into the very end. But if they're not, oh, that's right, Jesus, wow. So we'll take this off. I'm going to put a little strip of metal in there as well. I remember saying earlier on in the series that what they used to do years ago was put in a halfpenny, because a halfpenny would have been made of copper, and it would have been malleable enough. It would have taken up the shape of this ball end in here, and would have slowly worn. And when you tighten it, it would have taken all the free play out of that. So I have a jar of halfpennies, but I'm not going to use a halfpenny. I'm going to put in a little bit of sheet metal into that and grease it up. We'll put on spring washers on that. I want to be careful here. Oh, there's no jack on this side anyway. So yeah, that could do with it. So in this case, it's fairly well worn. You can see. Is there a lump gone over there? Maybe not, but I'll put a bit of sheet metal on that, grease in behind it, grease all around it really, fill the cap with grease, tighten it all back up with spring washers, and that should be solid. So put a bit of grease all around this, and cut out a bit of sheet metal there for it as well, so that'll act as a bit of we'll call it a shim. So we will call it a shim. These are often overlooked, you know, they're not given any attention at all, but they nearly always need some form of attention at this stage of the game. Years of hitting bumps and potholes and the front axle flexing, turning and all of that. Put in a little bit of sheet metal there, whatever way it wants to sit. That's perfect. Push it in by hand. That's lovely. That's going to take the shape nicely. So as you're pushing this in, you just keep the sheet metal pushed in, and then you don't need her. Actually, I'll put them on. Actually, the spring washer bag is actually just under the tractor here. Now, pick out two, the right ones. That's one there as well. it's not, it's too small. That's too big. There we go. I might need to tighten this in first to get that, yeah, well, to get that sheet metal bent a little bit into shape, and then we'll take them off again and fire on the spring washers, and it'll be ready to job off. So then there was an interesting part Harry Ferguson came up with in the Ferguson 20, and this is the same on this. They used a foot peg as the bracket for this radius arm. I suppose a cut down on an extra part hasn't been made, I suppose. I know at the Ferguson 20 you got a spanner with it, or a Ferguson spanner. There was two sizes on that. There was an 11/16, this size here, and the other size was an 1/16, and that was for all your wheel nuts and for a lot of the nuts and bolts on the Ferguson plough. So the idea was that that spanner you could actually make a lot of adjustments. You could adjust the clutch with it as well. You could tighten up these bolts. All of the bolts on the steering box are 11/16. Ferguson 20 diesel, the injector pipes were 11/16. So you could bleed your diesel injection system with it. You would have left that spanner in the toolbox. There's our grease coming out, so we'll shove that back in the front there. That'll help keep dirt and dust and water out. So this is exactly what I want. I want to feel seen there, a bit of resistance. And tighten up, because that's that sheet metal starting to take up the slack in there and the free play. After a while you can't use a socket because of the casting stops it going in, so you have to put on a little spanner. I will put the breaker bar, the extension now on with it. Even if I have to go down to a 3/8 socket just to get in there, gives it a good tighten, because it does need to be fairly snug. But now you can see there's no free play in that radius arm at all. That's going to make all the difference in the world to your steering. It literally transfer what you're doing in the steering wheel into your wheel. Simple as that. Lovely. So I'll be going around these all one more time anyway with the breaker bar, and we'll give everything a good final nip up, make sure it's all A1 and ready to go. So that's two little jobs done in that area there. A bit of tidying up here on the wires, so I use a bit of this it's kind of a wiring loom tape, so I cover up all of the spade connectors just with a little bit of that, and I put this kind of protective tubing on them. Same with this one here. So it's just nicer, and you know, you have the kind of yellow connectors on them and stuff. So I prefer just to do that. I find it's just a little bit tidier looking, if I'm being honest, than leaving spade connectors on them, you know. It just makes it look a bit more kind of a factory kind of a look to it. And that's your positive feed in from the battery. The battery is the cutout switch on there, isolation switch. Handy piece of kit. So you'll be taking off your battery leads. So at least now all the wires are black and you're not seeing them yellow electrical connectors standing out and stuff. So that's good and snug there. this connection going into the alternator, I just have to tighten that a little bit. It's just a little bit loose for my liking. It still is a little bit loose, so just find these. Just need to give it a little bit of a squeeze there, and make sure you're making a good connection in there, because if it's not, your charging systems could easily start giving out. That's it. You want to feel it scratch its way in. So that's that. Make sure there's a good and tight this connection, because this is a fairly important one. Okay, we have our connection there for the sunlight. That needed a little bit of squares as well. So I have it cable tied in the back there as well, the battery lead out of the way, because I didn't want it rubbing this and eventually maybe rubbing through and causing fireworks show. So that's nice. I prefer that look myself anyway. I think it's just a little bit more, you know, grey paint on the engine, black wires, black starter, bits of black on the alternator. I think it just looks a lot more tidy than some of these kind of yellow connectors and red connectors and all of that, spade connectors. So yeah, that's a nice little touch, I think. Being honest now, I'm starting to get very happy with this side of the engine. I mean, everything looks very neat. Between cutting the pipe and the intake, they're going to the intake manifold, you know, putting on the sticker on the air filter, painting the air filter, tidying up the wiring and the throttle rods. You know, I'd be very happy that that's a very, very presentable engine from this side anyway.